Okay, for number 1, there's a common 5 in each of these. So if we factor out the 5, we'll be left with 5x squared minus 6. And you can double check by multiplying this, you get 25x squared, and you multiply by this, and you get negative 30. Here, these are all divisible by 10, but I'm going to take out a negative 10 so that my first term is positive. And these are all also divisible by x. So I'm going to take out a negative 10x, and that'll leave behind a 2x squared minus 3x plus 5. And you can just double check. This times this is negative 20x cubed. This times this is a positive 30x squared. And this times this is a negative 50x. Okay, these are all divisible by 3, so I'm going to pull out a 3, and I'll pull out an a squared because that's the smallest of all of the a's. And I'll pull out a b squared because that's the smallest of all of the b's. And then I'll open up a parentheses, and I'll have a to the third minus 3ab squared plus 4b to the third. And I'm just going to double check that this cannot be factored, but it can't, so this is my final answer. Okay, let's see. 6 can go into these items, so I'll take out a 6. And then for the x's, I'm going to take out an x to the third because that's the smallest of all of the x's. I'll take out a y to the second because that's the smallest of all the y's. And I'm going to take out a z to the 3 because that's the smallest of all the z's. And that's going to leave us with a 3y minus 2xy squared z plus 4x squared, and that's it. I'm missing a z there. Okay, for this problem, this plus makes this a term and this a, this a term and this a term. And then these are called factors because they're being multiplied together. So this is like, let's say I had AB plus AC. The common factor is the A. So if I take out the A, I'm left with B plus C. So that's what I'm doing here. Here's my common factor of C plus D, or C minus D. So I'm pulling out the C minus D, and then that leaves behind 2x, that plus that. There's a plus there. So 2x plus y plus 3x plus y. And then I'm going to combine like terms, and I'm going to get 5x plus 2y in here. Again, this plus makes this a term and this a term. The x plus y is common, so I'm going to pull out the x plus y. That comes out. And I'm going to be left with this plus this. So 2r minus w plus 3r plus 2w. And I'm going to combine like terms here, and I'll get 5r plus 1w. And that's all you can do. Okay, this minus separates this term from this term. The 2w plus y is a common factor, so I'm going to pull that out. And I'm going to have 2w plus y times this minus this. But there are multiple terms here, so this negative is going to distribute through. So what we really have is 5x minus 3r minus 2x minus r. And then what happens is this negative distributes, and you get negative 2x plus r, which combines to 3x minus 2r. Here I have four terms. What I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these. I'm going to treat these two as if they're a separate problem and these two as if they're a separate problem. And out of these two, I'll factor out an a. And that's going to leave behind a c plus 3. Over here, I'll factor out a positive 2. And that'll leave behind a c plus 3. Now, this makes this a term and this a term. And the common factor in each term is c plus 3. So that comes out. And then I'm left with a plus 2. And that's all you can do. Here I have four terms, so I know I'm going to factor by grouping. I'm going to start by trying to group these two together. And that means that there's a common 2p that can come out. And that leaves a 4r minus 1. That means I know I've got to leave behind a 4r minus 1 again. And that looks like now I must have to take out a negative 3. Because negative 3 times this is my negative 12r, and negative 3 times this is a positive 3. And I put this down right away because I knew it had to match this. Then it's easier just to figure out what that has to be. Now here's my common factor in each term, so that's going to come out. And I'm left with this minus this. Again, I have four terms, so I'm going to group these two together as if they're a separate problem, and I can take out an a. And that leaves behind c plus d. So I know I'm going to leave behind a c plus d from my next two terms, and then you just got to think, what do you need to pull out of there so that that works? And it's a positive b. And that works because positive b times c is there, and positive b times d is there. But now I have two terms separated by this. This and this are common factors in those, and I pull those out. And then I'm left with this plus this. Okay, here I have four terms. So I'm going to group these first two together as if they're a separate problem. And it looks like I can take out a 2x. And so that's going to leave behind a 5a plus 2r. That's because if I multiply this back in, I get 10ax. Multiply by there, I get 4rx. So now that I see that this is left behind, I'm going to leave a big space and leave that behind again. And then I'm going to look at these two and think what I can take out and put right there so that it multiplies to that. And it looks like a negative 7y. And just double check, negative 7y times this is this, and negative 7y times this is this. So that works. So now I have two terms separated by this. The common factor is the 5a plus 2r. So that's going to come out. And I'm going to be left with this minus this. And that's it. If you get confused and you're not sure it works, FOIL this and make sure your four terms come out to those. They might be in the wrong order, but they should all come out to those. Again, I have four terms, so I'm going to factor by grouping. I'll group these two together, and it looks like a common x can come out. and that leaves behind a y minus 2. So I'll leave a big space and I'll put y minus 2 down again. Then I'm going to think about what I'd put here so that when I distribute, I get back to those. And it looks like a positive 5. Just double check that it works. 5 times this is 5y, 5 times that is that. Now pull out the y minus 2, and I'll be left with x plus 5. Here I have 4 terms. I'll group the first 2 together, and I'll factor out that common a. And it leaves behind an r plus 2. So I'll leave a big space, and I'll put r plus 2 down again. Then I'll think, what do I need to put here so when I distribute, I get back to those? And it's a negative 3. So my final answer is r plus 2 times a minus 3. If you get confused, FOIL this out and make sure you get back to the original. Okay, here we have 4 terms. I'm going to group these first 2 together as if they're a separate problem, and it looks like I can take out a 4a. So I'll do that, and it'll leave behind a 2c minus 5. So now that I left that behind, I'm going to leave a space and put that down again. Then I'll think about what I'd have to put here so that when I distribute, I get back to here. And it looks like a positive 3. So this is my common factor in each of those terms, so I'll pull that out. And I'm left with this plus that. And if you feel like you might have made a mistake or you're not confident, FOIL this out and make sure those 4 terms get back to those. Here we have 4 terms, so I'm going to factor by grouping. I'll group these first 2 together as if they're a separate problem. And it looks like I can take out a 6x. And that leaves behind a 4f minus 3g. So I'll leave a big space and I'll put that down again. Then I'm going to think about what I need to put here so that when I distribute, I get back to those things. And it looks like a negative y. And just double check. Negative y times this is negative 4fy. Negative y times negative 3g is a positive 3gy. So it works. So this is my common factor, and I got to pull that out. And it leaves behind this minus that. And if you feel like you're confused and you're not sure, FOIL it out and make sure it multiplies out to those 4 terms. Okay, let's separate this out. All right, I'm going to group these 2 together as if they're a separate problem, and I'll take out the a. And that leaves behind an r plus y. So I'll leave a big space and I'll put r plus y down again. Then I'm going to think about what I put here so that when I distribute, I get back to those. It looks like a negative 2b. And just double check that it works. Negative 2b times this is that, negative 2b times this is that. So here's my common factor, r plus y, and I'm going to pull that out. And it leaves behind a minus 2b. Okay, here I have 4 terms. I'll group these first 2 together, and it looks like it can take out a 3x. And that leaves behind an a plus b. So I'm going to leave a big space and put down a plus b again. Then I'll think about what I'd have to put here so when I distribute it, I get back to those. And it looks like a positive 2y. So my common factor is a plus b, and I factor that out. And it leaves behind 3x plus 2y. Again, if you're not sure, FOIL this out and make sure you get back to those 4 terms. Okay, finally, here's 4 terms. I'm going to group the first 2 as if they're a separate problem, and it looks like there's a 3x that can come out. So it leaves behind a 2y minus 3. So I'm going to leave a big space and put that down again. Then I'm going to think about what I'd have to put here so that when I distribute it, I get back to that. And it looks like a positive 2. So my common factor in each term is 2y minus 3. And it leaves behind 3x plus 2. And again, if you're not sure if you did it right, FOIL this out and make sure your 4 terms get back to those. That's it.